Hello, Louisville. Guess who's coming to dinner? Hello, Louisville. Hello, world. It's Friday. Thank goodness gracious it's Friday. We made it. Another day. Lord, this world is in such an uproar. Death is all around us. This is the fight against good and evil. We're going through it. So everybody better figure out what side you want to be on. Because this is no joke. All this is predestined. It has been prophesied, right, Jack? Yes. It has been prophesied that what we're going through, these worst of times, you better be prayerful. Get your house straight, as they say. Get your house straight. Get yourself straight. Get your mind straight. Some people need to change their hearts. Guess who's coming to dinner is a show about racism and racist policies and trying to find solutions. And it's also about uplifting our community. So I have a range of guests from people that run programs that are doing wonderful things that we don't hear from a lot. I try to bring you the unsung. And today I'm bringing you the up and coming and get out the way. Watch out. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you my guest today. She is Kentucky's newest. She may be the first poet laureate. Her name is Miss Crystal Wilkinson. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you.
I was so tickled. I saw your picture. I said, "Ooh, I'm going to get her." It's National Poetry Month, right?
It is.
And I thought, I said, I like to be first. Everybody better watch out because I'm watching to see what's going on. I'm trying to pay attention, and I'm trying to be very intentional with everything that I do. And having you on the show today is very intentional, my sister.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you had me on. When I don't know you, but when I saw your face, I gotta notice that you wanted to have me on, and all I needed to do was see your face. I was like, okay, let's go, let's do it.
Hey, wonderful, wonderful. So, because we've never met before, tell me and my audience about yourself. Where you from? Like I said, who's your mom and dad? Where'd you go to school?
Who my people is?
Who your people is? Come on with it.
So, right now, I'm a professor at University of Kentucky, and I teach creative writing in our MFA program here in Lexington. But where I'm from the country. I'm from a little place called Indian Creek, Kentucky, which is sort of south central Kentucky. Casey County is where I'm originally from. And I was raised by my grandparents on 64 acres of land. My grandfather was a tobacco farmer. I write about that a lot. My grandmother was a domestic, cleaned up houses for people. And that's where I was raised up on the farms. And went to Eastern Kentucky University and got a journalism degree, and been writing ever since.
When were you at Eastern Kentucky?
The 80s, like 80.
Okay.
I graduated from high school in 79, so 80 through 85 or so.
Oh, okay. So you're a spring chicken. My husband went to EKU. He's in here. His ears perked up. So how did you get into writing poetry?
Well, really, poetry was my first love, but poetry was my second love. All my books, I have one you can see behind me, Blackberries was my first book, is fiction. And my second book, Water Street, is also fiction. And my third book is a novel called The Birds of Opulence. And those were all published. But I always wrote poetry, but it was something that I sort of kept for myself.
Okay.
I'm a
very
member
personal.
of it. Yeah, it is very personal. And I'm a member of the Appalachian Poets. So we used to go around different places throughout Louisville, Lexington, around in the state and beyond, reading poetry as a group. And every once in a while, I'd read a poem with them. But mostly, I was a fiction writer. Okay. So my work was always too long, and I kept my poems to myself. So after publishing these other books, a friend of mine who's an editor said, "Can I see some of your poems?" And so she sort of took those poems and looked at them, and she said, "Do you think you have a book? I think you have a book here." And I said, "No, I never thought about publishing a collection of poetry." And she said,
Hmm.
"Yes, this is definitely a book." And so she encouraged me to
Right.
seek publication for the poems. And so some of the poems are new, some of them I wrote a long time ago. So it's sort of a collected volume. Um, and it's called Perfect Black. And it's poems about the first, it's in three sections. So the first section is about girlhood, about Black girlhood, growing up on the farm. The second section is about coming into womanhood. And the third section is about a growing consciousness, a social and political consciousness.
Okay. So, so this is so your I mean, when you the moment that you started to write those personal poems, what was that moment like? What pushed you that way? What made you decide to put pen to paper in that form?
Mm. Um, I think it was, like I said, it was very personal. It was a way of getting close to the bone. Because in fiction, I write fiction, and there's always a thread of truth through the short stories or through the novel. There's
Hmm.
there's something weaving through there that I believe in, or something that really happened in real life, but it's not sort of laid bare.
Right.
Um, so I could put those things in my journal, but I also began to write poems. It was a short form. It was a form that I could express my emotions. I won't say that the speaker of every poem in here is directly me. Sometimes I take on the persona of my grandparents, of my
Okay.
grandfather. Sometimes the persona is sort of, it may say I, but it's sort of close to me, but not, it's right beside me, not
Right.
exactly my own experience.
Hmm.
So I hope in that way that it not only soothes me in some way to write them, but I hope that other people will be able to relate to them as well.
Hmm. So your grandparents, they were your nurturers, right? So you
Absolutely.
saw and living on a farm now, that has to be different. I mean, well, I know my mother was somewhat raised on a farm with eight other siblings. Well, nine other siblings. She was the 10th one. And that her life experience, I heard more stories about when she went to live with her grandmother,
Hmm.
and those stories. Uh, tell me a little bit about your grandmother.
Um, so I was actually born in Hamilton, Ohio.
Okay.
And my mother got sick, and you know how country, well, they can be country or city, how
Right.
black people are. They're like, okay, we got to go get our baby. She's
Right.
sick, and she has a baby. So
Right.
my grandparents came to pick us up. I was 6 weeks old, and my mother ended up working, and she was hospitalized for a while. I ended up living up here in Lexington, and my grandparents took me in. And so my grandmother was sort of a mother to me. Like I was 6 weeks
Right.
old
Yeah.
when she took me in,
She
and
wasn't sort of like she was that second mama for sure.
absolutely. And she was a wonderful woman, a very spiritual, religious woman.
Hmm.
We went to a small little church called Pine Lake Baptist Church, where my grandfather was a deacon, and she was one of the esteemed members of the church, and that's the little church that I grew up in. Um, she did what most farm wives would do. She kept, I write a lot about food. She kept us fed,
Okay. All
and
right.
kept us fed physically, spiritually,
Spiritually, yeah.
and intellectually. Because even though they both weren't very educated, they made sure that I had lots of books uh, in the house, and made sure that I could read. And of course, I think reading begat writing, right?
Yeah.
My grandmother
Yeah.
always said that, I knew how to read before I went to school because she read to me every day and every night. And, uh, and once I had read all the books in the house, she said, then you started writing your own. And she said that, when I was 9 or 10 years old, I started like inventing my own stories and writing my little
Okay.
rhyming poems and things like that. So she was a big influence. And they were, even though they were country people, they were also art makers of sorts. My
Okay.
grandmother would write poems and songs on the back of envelopes and in her little notebook. And my grandfather whittled and carved. My grandmother made
Yeah.
quilts.
Yeah.
So in some ways, there was sort of an artistic spirit in our household. There was also a sense of freedom. They had 64 acres, and during that time in the 70s and early 80s, I was sort of I had a freedom to sort
Right.
of roam around and use my imagination, and I think all that informed my writing. There wasn't any danger. There may have been dangers, but
Right.
I wasn't aware of any, and they didn't sort of push me in that direction of
Right.
be
Right.
afraid. They just said, "Oh, go on out there." And
You were just raised up somewhat in an atmosphere of some innocence and freedom.
yes, absolutely.
It sounds like, a lot of times it's nice to know, who the person is that brings the words. That's why I just went a little bit deeper because I think about I think about my mother. I lost her about a year and well, a little over a year now, and everything that she gave to me and nurtured me, and she lost her mother when she was 7.
Mm,
See, she really was raised, but her brothers and sisters raised her.
mm-hmm.
So I used to say she turned out to be a wonderful mother, not to really have a mother.
Right.
So maybe let's go to some of the poetry. Let's hear
Okay.
you read to us.
All right.
I'm going to let you be single on the
Do you how many poems would you like me just to read one poem or more than one?
well, um now you said perfect black, um you said black girls and the womanhood and the growing civically. Can you give me a piece of those and then one of your favorites? How about
Okay.
that?
Okay. Um, so this is a poem about my mother. I didn't say before that my mother had suffered from mental illness, and so the reason why my grandparents brought her home was because she had a nervous breakdown. So this happened several times in my life. My mother was institutionalized about 10 years in the 70s, and so this is a poem about farm life, but it's also a poem about my mother. It's called Asking About My Mother. In the small kitchen, the hog's head weaves the gamey scent of death throughout the house. My grandmother scrapes black hair from the hog's pink head with the sharp blade of her butcher knife. I ask her about my mother. I always ask her about my mother. I play paper dolls under a formica table with
Mm.
pearls around my neck and pink lipstick from my mother's treasure chest. My grandmother places the head into the tub and I watch her hands, wait for her to tell me where my mother's gone. My grandmother fills the tub with water. I hate that she reminds me of all she's done for love. Remember, remember, hair, face, knife. She lifts the heavy tub and situates the hog upon the stove, covering all the burners, and turns on all the eyes. And so my grandfather, I don't know if you or your viewers know what a water witch is. So my grandfather was a water witch. You ever
A
heard of a
water
water
witch?
witch? Yeah.
No, I don't know
So
what a
you
water
may
witch
know
is.
the word dowser. You ever heard of a dowser?
Girl, no.
so so a water witch or a dowser was the man, usually a man in the community, where somebody would say, out in the country there's no city water. So
Right.
they'd have to build cisterns and wells.
In Wales, right.
So he would take um, a branch off of a tree. There was a certain kind of tree. I don't remember if it was apple or peach. And so he would walk somebody's land. People used to pay him to do this. He'd walk the land, and then wherever that stick would start moving and turn down, he had the gift, and he would say, well,
Okay.
dig right here. This
Right.
is
Okay.
where the water is. And so that people would dig, and that's where the water would be. And they would build their cistern or build their well, and they'd have water there. Um, and old time people also did things like, he used to do things like remove warts for people and all kinds of little things, like tell people like how many snows he predicted that we were going to have for winter. Um, so all of that is
He
sort of,
had a gift.
yeah, he had a gift, and all of
He had
that
a
was
gift.
sort of under that banner. But like I said, my grandfather had a third grade education, and always got in trouble. We got in trouble. Me and my grandfather would get in trouble because my grandfather would get on him because he had this third grade education and he couldn't really read, but because he kept his books on his farm, he was a mathematician.
Ah,
And so I would say, Granddaddy, what's this? I'd read the problem out loud and he would give me the answer. So I'd write the answer down, but I wouldn't have the
know how
rest of
he
the
got
project,
to it.
wouldn't know how I got to it. So
Right.
me and my grandfather were always in trouble. So this is, I have a series of poems in this book that I write from his voice. And this one is called The Water Witch on Reading. Oh, I cipher pretty good. And can't no white man cheat me on my crops or own my change at the feed store. I'm known around these parts for being able to remove a wart with a beam. I'm the one they come to when they want their well witched, and now everybody around here asks me how many snows we're going to have come winter, or when they need to pull a baby from a mama's tit. Man from way off stopped here once for me to teach him how to make sorghum. I've been but learning all my life. I can read a map, can read a man's eyes and see if he's truthful. I can level a girder by sight. I can read the tremble in a cow's gut, a man's footprints in the mud. I can read a man's heart to see if he's right with the Lord, though it ain't my place to say. I can read time by my own shadow. I can read the corner of Christine's red mouth and tell if she's mad at me. Only thing I can't read is words.
Wow.
So my grandfather
I
was a
like
very
that one.
religious. Thank you. He was a
Oh,
very
I
religious
really like
man.
that. I can see him.
Yeah, yeah. He was. I try to capture him, sort of in his moment.
Hmm.
Um, and he was a very wise man. Sometimes now we think that wisdom is even though I'm in education, we think that wisdom is only tied to education.
Right. No, it's
But
not.
but our old people were wise no matter what level of education they had.
Right. Well, they used to say you had book sense and you had common sense,
Mm-hmm.
and then you also had mother wit.
Yes.
That's I think maybe I know for sure black women have mother wit.
Oh,
I'm not
yes.
sure about white women, but they probably do. It's just it's that right that feeling right in the pit
Oh, yeah.
of your core that you know whether you should or you should not, whether it's good or whether it's bad. Just like you said, your granddaddy said he knew whether somebody was a no count scoundrel or but it wasn't for him to say, huh?
Right. Right. Wasn't for
I
him to
like
say.
that.
He said that all the time. And it's like, is this a good person? He'd say, ain't my, that's the Lord's decision. That's not for me to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. But either they can't come around here no more, or
Right.
he's welcome for dinner.
Right.
One of the
Right.
two. And so those were two of your favorites.
Those were two of my favorites. I thought I would read. Those were the ones that are sort of a lot of these pay a sort of homage to my grandparents, but I thought I would read one of the ones that eh, is more about what's going on today. This one's
Ah,
called
wonderful.
Black Body.
Okay.
My black body is a boulder, a stop sign. Sometimes I think my body is graceful, a song of freedom. Sometimes I think it is something that every eye casts away. I must concentrate if I want to fit inside small places, slip into the eye of America's needle. Twice last week I went without eating, filling up on self loathing and discontent, only to give in to a slice of pound cake and a bowl of ice cream. To stay awake, I drink a glass of tea and watch the fouled reality of television housewives. Before bed, I stretch myself out along the couch and place my feet in my husband's lap. I can't stop thinking about the little black girl in the back of Philando Castile's car.
Mm.
Mommy, Mommy, please stop screaming so they won't shoot at you. At 4 years old, she saw her mother's unarmed boyfriend shot, bleeding, dead on the front seat. I can keep you safe, she tells her mother. My body embarrasses the famous white woman at the writing conference as if my fat will rub off on her if she gets too close. When I'm sick, I
Mm.
want buttered sweet rice and a tender hand moving in circles on my back. Yesterday, I ate meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans at the Cracker Barrel in Tennessee. The white waitress called me baby doll. Once, I remember feeling the quickening of babies in my womb. 4 tiny hands pressing against my navel, 4 tiny feet pressing against my ribs.
Wow. Whew. What'd you say? Cracker Barrel. I'm saying no. She didn't go to the Cracker Barrel. But you
Yes,
said,
I
I
was
didn't. Now you said you brought up something that I hadn't heard before about the baby in the back seat. I didn't know that there was a baby
yeah,
in there. Mm.
yeah, she was there. The little girl to see, she witnessed her her mother's boyfriend, her stepfather, basically,
Right.
be killed.
This says all this has such an effect on our children.
It
What we're going
does.
through right now.
It
It's
does. And that poem sounds a little jumbled, but I was trying to make a point about the black woman's body and um and sort of body positivity as a big woman, but also about the body of Philando Castile and
right.
what his stepdaughter was saying to her mother, trying to protect her mother. And then I made the turn. I have a set of twins, so I made the turn to think about my own body as a nurturing place for children.
Right.
Because we have to. Sometimes, like this week, it seems impossible, right? It seems impossible for us to be able to protect our children when we see what's happened in the
Right.
community.
And plus, the I have I have that feeling in my pit of in the core of my body right now that if things don't turn right, we're looking at this country going ballistic. We see all these mass shootings, but that's nothing compared to the rage that is stirring in the souls of black men and women right now. There's
Oh,
nothing because
absolutely.
because we're thinking about how do you protect your child?
Right.
And
And
parents
it
say,
doesn't matter, like people keep saying, comply, but it doesn't matter if your hands are up, if
nope,
your hands are behind you, if you're
right,
handcuffed, if you are poor, if you have some prestige, if you're a
right,
military officer.
absolutely. It doesn't matter. You just got caught in the crosshairs. Wrong place, driving, walking, in the grocery store, in the park, in the swimming pool. I saw the one about the woman that was checked in the hotel and she took the kids swimming, and somebody said, "Do you have a room here?" Come
Right,
on now.
right.
I said, I'm probably a leather jacket and a beret short of being a panther, but I try my best to control
Well, it's
myself. In
hard. It's hard. I mean, I think that we we had a moment, and it was only a moment, where we felt safe to do our work and take care of our children. And I'm not so sure we were safe then, but we had a moment where we thought we were.
Right.
But we've returned to the 50s and 60s,
Right.
if not
Or
before
we've
then.
returned to the time before the time that our parents, I mean, my mother was a child. She was born in 27. So we've kind of gone all the way back there.
Yes.
We're smack dab in the middle of Jim Crow, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
For
And voting
absolutely.
rights are being taken away.
Oh,
Lives are being taken away.
absolutely. It's a sad state of affairs, but I'm gonna stay prayerful. And I'd like for you to just give me one more piece to take us take me home so I can. You have anything about the perfect book that you Perfect Black, something out of there maybe
Let's see.
about
Some of
womanhood.
some of these are long.
Girl, we got time. Because I'm going to tell you what has, and it's a wonderful thing. Since we've lost Maya Angelou, and then the young lady, Miss Amanda Gorman, came on the scene, uh, gangbusters.
Oh
You know,
yes. Oh yes.
and so that's why now it's like it's time. It's the poet laureate's time to be front and center stage, and I'm telling you, I'm glad you're here with me today because I could see everything you were talking about.
Good, good. Um, I think I'll read this one. I don't know if it's about being a woman. It is about me being a woman, and it's about so much of my life was spent sort of trying to change my accent and to become someone else, because in our community often country is a cuss word. It's like cussing you
Right,
out. When somebody says you country, they don't
right,
mean like how wonderful you are. They
right,
mean they mean
right.
that you're
When they used to
backwards in
say I
some way.
was from Kentucky, they say you country. I say I beg your pardon. I was born in the city.
Right. So this is called terrain.
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 Okay.
The map of me can't be all hills and mountains, even though I've been country all my life. The twang in my voice has moved downhill to the flatland a time or two. My taste buds have exiled themselves from fried green tomatoes and rhubarb for goat's milk and pine nuts. Still, I return to old ground time and again, a homing blackbird destined to return. I am plain brown bag, oak and twig, mud pies and gut wrenching gospel in the throats of old tobacco brown men. When my spine crooks even further toward my mother, I will continue to crave the bulbous twang of wild shallots, the familiar game of oxtails and kraut boiling in a cast iron pot. I toe dive in all the rivers, seeking the whole of me, scout virtual African terrain, sifting through ancestral memories, but still, I'm called back home through hymns sung by stout black women in large hats and flowered dresses.
Hmm.
You have to risk the briar bush to reach the sweet dark fruit, and ain't no country woman all church and piney woods. There is pluck and cayenne pepper. There is juke joint gyrations in the young'un bearing girth of this belly and these supple hips. All roads lead me back across the waters of blood and breast milk, from ocean to river to lake to the creek to the branch and stream, back to the sweet rain to the cold water in the glass I drink when I thirst to know where I belong.
Wow. You are fabulous, darling.
Thank you.
You are absolutely fabulous. Your work has um it's a let me put my arms around you and tell you a story. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of nice hug. Your poetry has a very warming and it's kind of piercing, but it draws a picture. Now I've never had anyone to read poetry to me before.
Oh, I'm so glad I got to do it. And when you say that, I mean, you've got it right on because I'm a storyteller first. I'm,
Okay.
I'm a fiction writer first. And
Okay.
part of being poet laureate is being sort of a person of letters, a woman of letters. And I'm very excited to be the first Black woman poet laureate for our state.
Okay.
Frank
Wonderful.
Walker was the first Black man,
Who
and
was
now I'm
it?
the first Black one. Frank X. Walker.
Frank X. Walker. Okay.
Yeah, he was the first Black man to be poet laureate for the state, and now I'm the first Black woman. So I'm very proud of that, and I want these 2 years to not really be about me. Like I'll read my work, but I want to promote other Kentucky writers and other Kentucky poets,
Okay.
um, and that's what
So
I'll be
so
doing.
what being a poet laureate, you travel the state, you um uh what do? You have a mission or an
Yeah,
assignment
sort of.
that you carry out?
Yeah, I mean, my platform I've decided will be just that. Hold on, we have a lot of authors and poets and storytellers uh, in the state, and we only see a handful of them. So part of my mission will be to find those other writers and bring them forth. I want to do a podcast similar to yours where I have nothing but writers come on. I want to do young writers. Like I know that Kentucky has some Miss Gormans among it, and I want to find them. I want to do young people. I want to do some readings by elderly people
Right.
and interview them on my show. I'll be going to schools, to libraries, and because of my own interests, I want to cover to cover us, and I
Right.
want to cover other cultures as well to sort of show the world. You know, when you go somewhere and you say you're from Kentucky, and they're like, "Oh, there's Black people in Kentucky." Well, yes.
All I think is chicken. Oh, the Colonel Sanders. I said, well, that's one part of it.
Right.
Is the grass really blue? I said, when the sun hits it a certain way, yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like they don't know much, and our state, right now doing civil unrest. We're not shown in the best light.
Well, that's
You know,
true.
our representation does not truly represent us, but that's been for years. I mean, as a people, sometimes our representation is not who represents us. Because
Well,
like they
that's
say,
true. But I think we have a lot of people in this state that are doing good work and
absolutely.
making good trouble.
Making girl, hush up. You said it to your mouth to my ears, to the Lord's ears. Well, Miss Wilkinson, will you come back and join me
I certainly will. I'd love to.
when you get some of your other poets? And if you want to stay on for a minute, I can maybe share little tidbits about this podcast thing. Um,
Sure.
I have some things I need to tell my audience, but I want to thank you for joining us. I love your work. How can we get your work? You say you've written these books. Where do we go to
Yeah,
get your books?
they're available anywhere books are sold. If you say I want to get one of Crystal Wilkinson's books, and you go to Barnes and Noble, or you go to uh, an online bookstore, you can find them
Okay.
anywhere. You should be
Amazon.
able to. Yeah, you should be
Okay.
able to request them or buy them on there. So Perfect Black won't be out until August, but you can pre-order. And my other books are available on Amazon, on bookshop.org, and in your favorite bookstore.
Bookshop.org. Okay. Well, darling, it was a pleasure to meet you. I want to hear more from you. I want to keep up with you. Like I told you, I've never had anyone read poetry to me. It's like I'm sitting up here like a big puddle right now, trying to contain myself, But
Well, you've got Hannah Drake there. You should have her on. You got Hannah Drake there
well,
in
I've
Louisville.
I've reached out. Miss Hannah's kind of busy.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, she's. I think her schedule's filled up, but I keep every now and then I say, "Hello, Miss Hannah, come on over." So eventually she'll get back to me. So, but I thank you for you following up and helping me to celebrate National Poetry Month.
Thank
And
you.
on that note, thank you so much, Miss Crystal. It's dinner time. You ready to have dinner?
I am.
Okay. Bon appetit.
Bon
I'll see
appetit to you.
I'll see you next time. Okay, darling. Thank
Okay.
you. All right, that's Miss Crystal Wilkinson, Kentucky's first African American poet laureate. That was beautiful. Oh, I was sitting over here, I was saying, Jazz, keep you cool, keep you cool. I love poetry. Being a singer, songs are a form of poetry. You've got a couple of verses and then you have the hook. So, and poetry always tells a story, and she's a storyteller. So you can get her books at Barnes and Nobles. And as for Miss Crystal Wilkinson, Wilkinson. Okay, that's Miss Crystal Wilkinson. She was here for Poetry, National Poetry Month, right here on Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. All right, well, it's the end of the week, and Monday we're going to dive deep. We're going to have an encore appearance by Dr. Eddie Woods from No More Red Dots, because this is an organization that he's not the one that you call after someone, after your children have had a beef with somebody and found dead on the streets. He's the person you call when your children have a beef before something happens to them. So we need to talk about that. We need to be supportive of this organization. And I want him to come and talk about what's been going on in Louisville once again. It's going on all over the country. But once again, our death rate, our homicide rate amongst our kids is one of the highest in the countries. And we've got to find a way. We've got to find a way to get to them. We've got to find ways to deter their carrying the guns. And, let's make a pact. I won't cause you harm. You won't cause me harm. Because these mothers are having fits. But these mothers also have to come to an understanding that you might know your child has a gun in the house. And that's not helping him or her. We don't know if it's a boy or girl nowadays, if who's carrying the guns. But parents are going to become held responsible. That's the only way that this is going to stop. That parents are going to be held responsible for taking the life of another child. On that note, keep watching. It's dinner time. Bon appetit. Guess who's coming to dinner? I'll see you on Monday. Be good. Take care. Stay safe. Put that mask on. I don't care if you